So it is official, ladies and gentlemen. Nico Lava is no longer a Tennessee Volunteer. So he will enter the portal. We knew that this was going to happen. We told you yesterday that he doesn't want to be in Knoxville. And guess what? If you're still shocked, hey, I hate to sell it. Hey, I told you so, but I told you so. Let me remind people that you asked for this in college football. When you got NIL in 2021, you have no restriction on the athlete and what they could do. You're not no longer limited to the jersey sales or to anything that's going on in the student shop. You weren't limited to any of that, guys. This was what you wanted. And guess what? You got what everybody wanted. And honestly, do you really deserve it? I have a hard time believing you do. Just to be straight up with you. Because I don't see a scenario where when I look at a guy like Nico Lava, I don't see a $2 million quarterback. I don't see a $1 million quarterback. I see an above average quarterback that, to be honest with you, doesn't even deserve the money. So this is the report that we got from college football yesterday before all of this transpired and went down, as he's no longer at Tennessee. So he signs an agreement with Tennessee's NIL collective that it could pay him more than $8 million by the end of this year, which would have been his junior year. He had him being paid 2.2 to 2.5 mil. The team wanted his deal to be increased to the 4 million range, which would have been $1 million more than Bryce Underwood and Carson Beck, which I think is ludicrous that Bryce Underwood's making that kind of money when he hasn't even stepped foot on a college football stage. So negotiations are, by the way, down the toilet, and everybody's shocked. And so earlier today, Josh Heupel came out and said, Nico's no longer with us. We don't want that BS. We're done. We don't want his crap. We don't want to deal with his garbage. Guys, this is exactly what we were trying to tell you for the longest time. That things like this were going to happen. That we would see so much crap dealing with NIL, dealing with guys wanting better deals. You get what you paid for. The fans wanted this. Everybody wanted this, but nobody wanted to admit that it's their fault. That at the end of the day, when things like this get out of hand, it's nobody else's fault but ours, guys. We have to take responsibility for it. And I told this to one of my buddies. Everybody wants to see the college athlete get paid their fair share, but when things like this get out of hand, they want to point the finger at the athlete instead of their own dang selves who didn't think about the consequences of this. And for all you saying, oh, well, you're not for the athlete getting paid. You're not this. You're not that. Shut up. You're full of crap. What I am against is 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds thinking that they're the next great thing and I'm so great. And you end up getting burnt. And you act like you're better than the rest of the team. Well, I give kudos to both Josh Heupel and to Dan Lanning. Because they both called out Nico on his BS. They knew what was going to happen. You're talking about a guy that's snooping around. Everybody wants to talk about tampering and how coaches are just trying to get athletes. You do realize the athletes are going after coaches too, trying to get a better deal. They're snooping around the boosters. They're snooping around the collectives. They don't want to be in their respective position. And here's where I'm at. We need to replace NIL with performance-based incentives. Any school as well that is in the P4 level will get the same TV revenue that they generate from broadcast. So, however much money you generate from the revenue that you get on television, that's what you're going to get whenever it comes to college football. And that's what you're going to get when it comes to all of this. When it comes to NIL, when it comes to just guys getting paid. Everybody's going to say, well, you're not pro athlete. No. I'm pro guys that think they're the stuff and they're really not. A la Nico who, by the way, if you really watched Tennessee last year, Dylan Sampson was the one that carried the team. I don't care that, he threw 2,600 yards, 19-5 touchdown interception ratio. You can look at stats and say, well, he's an above average quarterback. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's an average Q. He was 7th in the SEC in QB rating. Not even a top tier quarterback. So when you start talking about guys like that have games like where you go, 18-28, $150, 0 touchdowns and an interception. And you got guys like Dylan Sampson that runs for 22 touchdowns. I had to tell my boy Tyler Fortney, who's in the chat right now, he said, Nico, a B word. I'm not going to say the last name because we on YouTube too. We're going to get demonetized if I say that. But I would say yes. I would say the entitlement of our generation has gotten to these guys to think they're so much better than the rest of this. And I've seen several players tweet out, and I've had a couple that come to me and say, dude, I tell you what, if our starting Q would have came to us and said, I'm not coming to practice because I need money, get the hell out of our building, bro. This ain't what it's about, bro. This is not what it's about. That's a joke, man. And to be honest, I don't care where you go at this point. The fact that any school would pay $4 million for a guy like Nico Iamaleava, or Iamaleava, I'm a leave, I guess. Well, guess what? That's your fault. You're paying for an overrated guy to come into your locker room who is so entitled that we have to deal with this crap. That you couldn't see the red flags of when you initially saw this back in April. That literally your school backed you whenever the allegations came up of you being in a private jet taking a tour of Tennessee back in 2022. And you won the case and everybody was up in arms with you. They supported you then. What did you do? Put a pretty pitiful performance on the field, if I'm being honest. If that, especially in crunch time games, you were not effective. You just simply weren't, guys. And whether we want to admit it or not, this is the entitlement of college football that we've come down to. All right, got that out the way. We are live, ladies and gentlemen, once again for the second day in a row, breaking down day 2 of the Nico Iamaleava saga. I never would have thought this would have been a huge ordeal in college football, but here we go. We got a lot to break down today. It's not just this, guys. Trust me. We spent about 20, 25 minutes. If you tuned into the show yesterday, we talked about this specifically. But everybody do me a favor. Hit the like and share. Make sure that you turn on the bell notifications. If you're watching us on Instagram, leave a comment down below. Let us know you're in the chat. Same with all of our other social medias, YouTube and Twitter. If you're watching us on Twitter, like, share, hit the repost button to let your friends know that we're talking about Nico Lava. So, guys, look, you better strap in because we got a lot to talk about. Every show is brought to you by our good friends over at Hero Soap Company. Go on over to herosoapcompany.com and use code Huddle Up for 10% off of your first purchase when you use code Huddle Up. Also want to thank our good friends over at vocalbreaks.com. Vocalbreaks.com. Use code LucasHill10 for 10% off of your first purchase. Vocalbreaks.com, one of the best in the business when it comes to AI powered technology, when it comes to the production business, whether you're a DJ, producer, just a podcaster. Use vocalbreaks.com, use code LucasHill10 for 10% off your monthly purchase. So yesterday about almost 300 of you tuned in. We got about 15 right now in the chat. So we aren't doing too terrible. But guys, everybody do us a favor. Boost the algorithm, share with your friends, do whatever you need to do, guys. Appreciate the love. All right. Masters, by the way, is going on today. Scotty Scheffler just had a chip-in birdie. We'll give you live Masters updates right now, actually, as we continue on. So it's the second day. So we'll go ahead and give you the leaderboard as of now. We got round 3. Justin Rose currently is in the lead with an under 8 par. He just finished round 3. Tomorrow is the final day of Masters. Masters is always fun, guys. I'm telling you. So we'll get into the other ones. Bryson DeChambeau is 7 back in the second slot. We got Rory McIlroy and Corey Connors who've come in at tied for 3. How about the underdog? The underdogs are coming in hot. Zach Johnson coming from the bottom plus 75,000 odds to win the whole thing. And guess what? He's come back and he's tied for 5th now with 5 under, tied with Sungjae Im, Matt McCarthy, Shane Lowry, and Scotty Scheffler and Tyrell Hatton for 5th place. Johnson's tee time has already been done. Dude, he shot brilliantly today. Shot under 7, which I thought was really, really impressive. So he shot up 35 places since his last shot, which I think was awesome. So Justin Rose trying to get his first Masters of his career in the major tournament. But he came in with the plus 300, 800 odds to win the whole thing. We'll take a look at the rest of the lineup. Yeah. So Rory McIlroy was the one who was initially the favorite. He is now tied for 3rd, followed by DeChambeau, Scheffler, Rose. But it's been a weird day in the Masters. How about Justin Thomas? He's at plus 3. It's been a rough afternoon as well for him. But yeah, man, that's been college football. So we don't just talk college football, guys. We talk Masters. We talk all that stuff, baby. We talk a lot around that, brother. Shout out Tyler Moody, who is in the chat as well. We got to meet Tyler a couple of months ago. By the way, we still need to talk with him about getting Mincy on here. We want to see if Mincy wants to come up on here. All right. A lot of risers in the Masters as well. So I will say Justin Rose, all likelihood, unless it's going to be a tight one between him and DeChambeau. I would like to see. I think the underdog story would be awesome for DeChambeau to come back and win this one. Shambo finished sixth last year, and here's a guy that went to live golf, came back to the PGA Tour, and I think it's really awesome just seeing his reappearance back here in the Masters. So, really awesome to see. All right. But yeah, man. Shout out Justin Rose. Dude's been there for a while. Johannesburg native, by the way. So, got a lot of friends that are out there in Johannesburg. A lot of great overall people. All right. So, Zach Johnson just dropped down to 11th, by the way. So, he went from under 7. He did win the Masters back in 07. So, it's been a while since Zach Johnson's been around. So, we'll see what he's got at the end of the day. Okay. This whole Nico situation has been blown out of proportion, and I think it's a big deal that we are currently in the midst of talking about this. How about Matt McCarthy, by the way? plus 8,000 to win the whole thing, and he's coming back in this one. But I will say, when you give, this is going to be the last point I make about Nico. When you give an opportunity for kids to come in and think that they're the stuff, that's whenever you're going to put yourself in a bind. When you have kids that think they are better than what they really are, when you give them an opportunity to make money, they're going to screw your eyes out. Whether we like it or not, that's the truth. So that's exactly what happened with Nico. And this has been going on since he first got to Tennessee, ever since he was in high school, actually. So what's next for Tennessee? Let's just talk about where his landing spots are going to be. I know people said he was wanting to go to Oregon or whatnot. Oregon's not going to go get him. Not with the crap that he pulled. That is not even going to come close to happening. He's going to end up on the West Coast. And I've talked with this with a lot of people. I've come down to 3 places. USC would be a good fit with Lincoln Riley's offense. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time he's got a transfer quarterback from a now SEC school, I guess, when you talk about Caleb Williams. But Lincoln Riley is going to be a good fit with Nico and his skill set. He was on the West Coast for a while. I think he's going to be a great fit when you get him into that offense. I think he can really elevate his game at the end of the day, but we just don't know at the end of the day. I would also like to see what UCLA has to offer. I mean, Deshaun Foster's going into year 2 of his era at UCLA. I would like for him to pull the trigger. Go try and get a guy from there. Go dominate the portal. I know it's going to be hard, especially going into year 2, knowing that you lost a guy like Ethan Garbers, who's now in the portal. It also doesn't help that you lost a lot of guys that were currently who was there before when you talk about Justin Martin, who's now at Maryland. But I am interested with this recruiting class that I thought you really did better than expected. When you talk about getting a guy like Joey Aguilar from Appalachian State, was the Sun Belt Newcomer of the Year 2 years ago. Aguilar is a pretty interesting prospect because of what he can do on his feet and how elusive he is. I will say the one thing I want to see him improve on, quarterback rating, his passing accuracy. Can he become an effective quarterback? Because he took a big step back in his accuracy because he was really efficient in 2023, 63% completion rate to a 55% completion rate. So I want to be able to see him really elevate himself at the next level. I want to see him be able to become a better quarterback. But if that is not the case, it'll be a battle between him and Nico. I wouldn't count anything out. Tino Sunseri, who was at Indiana last year, was in the Kurt Cignetti system for 4 years before taking the UCLA job. He was at Tennessee as a quality control assistant, was in the SEC for a couple of years before getting his first big time job at UCLA. But I do want to see what UCLA can do with this offense and see how they can improve. Guys, this was one of the worst offenses in college football last year. So we'll see what kind of guy this dude can be. You bring in Key Lawrence, who has been everywhere at this point. Was at Tennessee, then went to Oklahoma, then Ole Miss. Didn't really do anything last year. But I do want to see what type of guy this kid can be. I think he can get on the field and make plays. And I think he can be a difference maker for any team. Anthony Woods is your new quarterback coming from Idaho and Utah. Woods didn't see the field at all last year. Guys, he's 1,000-yard back. I think he can compete highly at UCLA. I think Deshaun Foster, with what kind of experience he has as a running back coach, I think you can get him more elevation, more exposure when it comes to the back position. I think you can really improve in that department. This is a guy that's a hard runner. You know, you're talking about a guy that can really, really make plays when it matters most. And you're talking about a guy that was one of the FCS's best backs in 2025. Or 2023. So I do think he has a lot of experience in that department. We'll see if a guy like Deshaun Foster can bring that out. So definitely one to look forward to. And here's an interesting one that I think a lot of people aren't going to think about. UNLV could be a really interesting place that Nico could end up at. Here's why. UNLV is starting to get traction for their NIL collective. You know, they're starting to get some dollars into that program. And everybody talks about, Matt Sluka, who's leaving because of the failed ordeal. So here's what's going on. It's illegal right now for colleges to make direct payments to student athletes based on NIL. So this is about to change with their new deal with the Mountain West and with everything else. I do think that UNLV could be a great place that if they can get the funds, don't be surprised if they go take a shot. I don't know if they are very well convinced with Alex Orji at the quarterback position, but I think that UNLV could be a likely place for a guy like Nico to end up in. I like the coaching staff that you're bringing in. I like Corey Dennis. I like Dan Mullen. I think they bring in a lot of dudes that you can also surround yourself with. You know, and I really have a lot of love for what those guys are doing. You know, you bring in a lot of stars on the offensive side of the ball. You know, I know that you brought in Anthony Calandra and Alex Orji, but say it doesn't work out, because I don't know if I can trust Anthony Calandra, nor do I know if I can trust Alex Orji. But you bring in JoJo Earl, who was a highly sought after guy coming out of high school. I think his best days are in front of him at UNLV. You brought in Tayshawn Lyons and Coy Moore from Utah and Western Kentucky as well. So you have the pieces, you have the weapons. Now you got to find a solid choice. I don't know if it's going to be Calandra or Orji at quarterback. it wouldn't surprise me if UNLV does go take a stab at them. But it's a long shot. That's all I'm going to say. But you can never count anything out when it comes to college football. All right, that's going to end it for today. Y'all have a great rest of the day. See y'all on Monday.